a lot of our coaches tend to be in their mid 30s to say mid 50s, right? They're just embarking on this new journey called coaching, and they often go, "It's new for me. I don't know how to deal with it." Now, you've started many companies and got them really, really successful. But if I was to ask, what would be a piece of insight, information, idea that you would like to share with somebody that's just starting out for their first business? They may be successful executives, but they've never really built a business.
Well, the first thing you have to always ask yourself is, why are you doing it? What is your why? What makes you click? Once you find a true purpose or why you do what you do, everything starts to fall in place. But you have to have a purpose that's bigger than simply making money, right? So to me, anytime I start anything, I don't care what it is, if it is worth giving 5-10 years of your life to dedicate it to it, you have to really ask yourself 3 questions. Why this? Why now? Why me? Why this is very simple from my perspective. Ask yourself, God forbid I am actually successful in solving the problem that I set out to solve. Would it help 1 million people, 100 million people, or 1 billion people live a better life? That means even if you're successful, is this really going to move the needle? And the reason I'm saying is not because somehow I'm philanthropic and I feel that people have to do good for the world. It is a capitalist thing to do, because anytime you build any product, any service that can help 1 billion people live a better life, you can create $100 billion company. But you don't wake up in the morning and saying, what should I do to make $100 billion, right? Making money is simply a byproduct of doing things that improve people's lives. So every day you wake up and saying, what can I do that will improve people's lives? How do I scale that to help millions of people, hundreds of millions of people? And once you do that, then you know you can have a great business. But always remember, a great business starts with solving a problem. Are you solving a real problem for someone who is suffering? And if you can help them better, you have a business. Now, the question really comes down to is, how many people? How do you scale? Because at the end of the day, if you're not moving the needle, that means you're going to have a small business. If you're moving a needle, that means you have a massive business. The second question you have to ask yourself is the timing good now? And what makes the timing good or bad is very simple. Ask yourself what had changed in the last couple of years. But more importantly, what do you expect to change in the next 3 to 5 years that will allow you to solve this problem at scale in 3 to 5 years? And this problem could not have been solved 5 years ago. That means you're really looking to see what are the set of technologies that are available to you that are at your disposal today that may not be right price point, but in the next 3 to 5 years, they're going to actually come down to a price point where you can have a massively scalable business. The biggest mistake a lot of the people make when they start a company is they build a business that just can't scale. So when they succeed, they fail, and when they fail, right? That means they will never be able to build a business because they started with a set of principles that will allow them to stay small because they just can't scale. So you have to always think that what if you're actually successful? Can you actually scale? Can you really build something that can help millions of people? Or you're going to be stuck with 10 people. And that means, are you really taking advantage of the technologies that are coming out? And are you really riding the wave of technology and using tomorrow's technology to solve tomorrow's problem? Or you're using yesterday's technology to solve tomorrow's problem? And I'll give you examples of that. The last part is the most important part, which says, why me? And that means, what questions are you asking that are different from what everyone else is asking? Because the questions you ask is the problems you solve. So depending on the questions you ask, you can reframe the problem, and suddenly the solutions are many that are not obvious, right? And we can go talk about almost any industry, and you will see that is the fundamental of how you look at the world from a different lens or a different perspective.
That's wonderful. So I have some follow-up to why this, why now, why me. So why this? The first part I have is I understand the value of a big business and how you can impact a billion lives. what I've found in my experience, in my experience of talking to a lot of individuals that are just starting out, is it feels incomprehensible for somebody who's just starting out. They go, wow, that's a lot of people. And I'm not saying it's right, but it does happen where you kind of go, I don't know if I can do this. It feels too difficult to tackle today. It may be in 10 years it's easy to tackle, but for now it looks really difficult. Is it okay to have a small dream?
Oh, so no, that is never okay to have a small dream. It's okay to start small, right? So your dream needs to be massive. Doesn't mean you boil the ocean on day one. You take this massive idea and say, I'm going to start here. And then I'm going to expand. Then I'm going to expand. But you have to have a vision that is much, much bigger. Because when you start out with a small vision, you use the set of technologies, your mindset, the people you hire are all people who will keep you small to begin with. So dreams need to be big, but you start out small, saying this is the only thing I'm going to attack. And I'm happy to give you an examples of how I go about doing that, is to have an amazingly audacious dream, but start with something that you can chew on today.
Yeah, that will be really good and helpful, I think. Because what I'm trying to see is how do you handle a dissonance of, I have this big dream, but I don't know the timeline of how long this takes because I'm just starting. Yeah. Versus saying, but today I can chase this, know, something that feels more comprehensible. I can go, okay, I can at least make sense and hold on to it. So a few examples might help.
Let's take we can talk about a generic problem like, say, world hunger, or we can just take about the health, because that's something I did. And I can give you a very specific example of how I went about doing it, right? So I started this company, Viome, 7 years ago. And when we started, we said, what if? What if we can actually understand what changes in the human body at the onset and during the progression of all of these chronic diseases, whether we call them diabetes, heart disease, depression, anxiety, Alzheimer, cancer. What is it that changes in the human body? If we can somehow figure that out, we might be able to prevent the diseases from happening. We might be able to stop the progression of the diseases, and God forbid, we can outright reverse all these diseases. If we could do that, would it help 1 billion people live a better life? The answer was 8 billion people. Every one of us is going to suffer through these things, including aging. Great, a massive dream. And then we say, look, why now? And we say, look, to solve this problem, there are 3 things have to be solved. You have to be able to digitize the human body. You have to be able to process massive amount of data. And you have to be able to use AI that's powerful enough to be able to make sense of all this data. And we started to say, look, the cost of digitization, even with a single sample, is now $1,200. And we said, wow, that is just unscalable. You can't afford, people are not going to be able to have billions of people pay $1,200 for this thing. But it used to be hundreds of thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars. And I think in the next 3-5 years, it's going to come down to $100. Well, it turns out, here we are sitting 7 years later, it's come down to $12. Right? So while we thought we were 10 times optimistic, turns out we were actually 7-8 times pessimistic. And that's the power of exponential technologies. When they're plummeting, you see the plummet and you say, you know what? I think the timing is good. Same thing happened when it looked at the processing of the data. When we looked at 7 years ago, the cost of processing a single sample was $47. We took a deep breath and said, wow, that's just a lot of money. And we said, look, the cost of computing is coming down. The computers are getting faster and faster. The cost of storage is coming down. Now you can have a terabyte on a phone. It's just plummeting the cost. In 3-5 years, this cost from $47 has to come down to $10. Today we sit here at $1.25, right? So everything that we thought were actually really optimistic, but we're still massively pessimistic because prices were plummeting faster than we thought they would. AI, we knew was going to be very, very powerful, so nobody had a doubt about it. So we said, let's go launch the business. Then came to a very interesting point of why me. While everyone in the industry was focused on simply wanting to understand your genes or your genetics, and people thought, wow, if I knew someone's genetics, I can go do something and personalize something for them. And that's where we looked at the problem from a very different perspective. It occurred to us that your DNA or your genes never change when you become diabetic. Your DNA doesn't change when you gain weight. Your DNA doesn't change when you get depression. Your DNA doesn't change when you have heart disease. As a matter of fact, your DNA doesn't even change after you die. And we say, wow, if DNA can't even tell you you're dead or alive, how will it ever tell you you're healthier or sicker? Must be something else that's changing. And then basic biology told us DNA makes RNA and RNA makes protein. So why not look at RNA? That's the dynamic information, which is gene expression, not your genes. So why not look at the gene expression, and that will help us understand what is actually changing. Now, the second part was, as we started to look at gene expression, turns out 99% of all the genes in our body don't come from our mom and dad. They come from these organisms that live in our gut, in our mouth, all over us. And that was like total shock. It's like, wow, that is the world that we know nothing about. What if we can find out what these organisms do? And so I started to look at all the research papers, and it turns out this gut microbiome and oral microbiome is actually connected to all the different diseases. So my first reaction was, eureka, we found the problem. And then my next reaction was, wow, if this is really true, there are tens of companies doing microbiome testing. Why is this problem not solved? What am I missing? And it turns out, go back to the, the root principle, and we say, look, what questions are these people asking? It turns out, just like a DNA, every microbiome company was asking the same wrong question. They were simply trying to figure out what organisms are in people's gut when they are sick. And I say, wait a sec, it's not about the organisms, it is about what they are producing, just like it's not about the gene, but what they're expressing. What matters is what these microbiomes are doing, and how is the human immune system, how is the human body reacting to it, and that is going to be the crux of the problem. So by simply asking the question, let's focus on what microbes are producing, not what microbes are. Let's look at the interaction, we can solve this problem. Seemed like a massive problem. First of all, no one has ever done how to do gene expression, but in my model, I never focused on how. I simply realized what needed to be done. Once I knew that to solve this problem, we have to know what microbes are producing, we have to know all the gene expression, we could solve this problem. Now, my only problem was, it is too big a problem for me as an individual who is not a scientist, who is not a doctor. How am I going to go do this? So first thing was, let's find the technology that can do that. I went around looking at NASA, I went to Stanford, MIT, I went to every university, I went to all the national labs. I was at Lawrence Berkeley, Lawrence Livermore, and finally I was at Los Alamos National Lab, where they were working on a biodefense technology, solving exactly the same problem for bioweapon biodefense, which is really, hey, if there was a terror in our great country, how would we ever figure out what's happening to our citizens, what's making them sick? They didn't care what organisms were there. What they cared about what these organisms were producing, so they could figure out how to create antidote for it. And we said, great. It took us 6 months, licensed the technology, got exclusive perpetual license, hired the person who developed the technology as chief science officer. And then next thing we knew, now we have the tech. Now the interesting thing was, once we figured out that this is the problem, we said, look, we can't really understand human body. It is too complex. It is too much work. We're going to simply start a company. And this, to answer your question, we say we're going to simply focus on understanding gut microbiome. And that's all we're going to do. So when we started Viome, only thing we did was to simply say, we're going to understand the gut microbiome and start collecting the information to see how gut microbiome impacts the health. And as we start to do that, we say, wow, there's a lot of information here, but we don't know what's happening in the gut, how it's changing the human body. We need to add the next thing. 4 years later, we say, you know what if we can add just the finger prick blood, so we can understand how these microbiome are communicating with mitochondria, how are they changing our human gene expression? We could actually really start to understand. And we did that. And that was product called Health Intelligence now. And so we did, and we say, wow, as we start to collect more data, we say, this is good, but a lot of the early part is actually coming from the oral microbiome. When you're chewing your food is actually being processed by your oral microbiome, and that's the reason why your mother says, eat slowly, chew your food. Is your oral microbiome actually is now impacting everything that's happening to what we eat. We have to really understand oral microbiome as well. And then we say, oh, now we can combine the oral microbiome and the gut microbiome and the blood, and that became a full body intelligence, right? So as you can see, I didn't start a day one to say, I'm going to solve this massive problem. But our vision never changed. On day one, if you look at our first tagline, including in the box, it says, imagine living in a world where illness is optional. That wasn't, imagine if you can understand your gut microbiome. We never say, Viome, a gut microbiome company. We simply said, Viome, imagine a world where illness is optional. So our vision was massive. But we started out very simple, one small problem to solve, which is understanding gut microbiome. And then we added blood, then we added saliva. Right? Now we may add skin microbiome, we may add urine, we may just continue to add more and more things as we go along. But you never start with a small dream, because when you start with a small dream, you never go big.
Beautiful. And what I'm loving about it is because your dream is dissociated itself from microbiome, while that is the thing that we talk about when we think about Viome. If tomorrow technology suggests something else, you might just say, oh, but our goal is to make illness optional, so we don't have, you're more flexible because of it, because of the vision.
That is the thing, is that you never ever say, I only think gut microbiome. We simply saying our problem we are trying to solve is to stop the humanity from getting sick from these chronic diseases. If gene expression is not the thing, because 5 years from now we learn and say, oh, we just found something different that actually might help us, as far as I'm concerned, out the window, because our vision is still the same.
So it provides flexibility as well.
Yeah.
So I have a secondary question to the second part, which is why now? So one of the things that comes to me when you said what is going to change is a quote I heard from Jeff Bezos once, and he is a little counter to that without addressing that particular thought. He says, we look at what will not change.
Okay.
All right. So I'm not saying what is right or wrong. I'm more curious about where is that dance of asking, because you're a technologist, you understand technology. A lot of our listeners, for that matter, most people in the world, may not be able to go, oh, I can really do the amazing thinking that you just shared as a pattern, or maybe are able to, but won't apply that mind to it. And they want to go something which is a little bit more, less transient, if I may call it that.
Actually, no, we are not saying something different. What Jeff is talking about, fundamentally, what are the problems that will continue to remain irrespective of what the technologies come and go? So when he says, what doesn't change in Jeff's world is very simple. People want something cheaper, faster, better. That means it doesn't matter what is happening in the world. No one wakes up in the morning and say, I would love to buy something that's really more expensive than it needs to be. I wish it could not be delivered in the next couple of days. Maybe I'm totally fine if it gets delivered in a couple of months, right? And no one says, God, you know what? I really don't want it to be efficient at all, right? So point is, what he's saying is what never changes is people want the best value, the fastest possible way in their things when they want it, right? That does not change. So when he built the company, he says, let us constantly look at the operational efficiency. That constantly delivers to what never is going to change. But just like Netflix, they were used to deliver CD-ROM. They never said, hey, we are in the CD-ROM delivering where the video businesses are using CDs, right? Or whatever, DVDs, right? DVDs, we never did the DVD. We are in a DVD distribution business. That was Blockbuster's business. They say we are in the business of delivering entertainment information to people. And then became streaming. And today there is no DVD. But their business was never about that. And that's a fundamental to understanding what business are you in. So when you make your business to be what you do today, then when that changes, you're no longer have any business. So if you are today, I remember there is a company, I asked them, I said, what business are you in? And he said, we are in trucking business. And I said, really? Because what happens if the goods somehow never get delivered through trucking? And they're like, what do you mean by that? And I said, think about it. You are in the business of distributing goods from one place to another place. Today it happens to be using trucks. Tomorrow it may be airplane. It may be Hyperloop. And someday it may be simply beam me up Scotty. You deatomize something and you atomize on the other hand. It is all may change, but you don't care. Your business never changes. You simply distribute goods. And I have such an interesting thing. There was a gentleman I was talking to. He said, you talk about all these tech. I simply make tiles for homes. How does my life changes with all the tech you talk about? And I say, it's because you think you are in a tiles business. What if you thought of yourself that I have the largest real estate in every home? What if my tiles were actually nothing but sensors? Every single company will be jealous of me because I know when people wake up, I know when people go to sleep, I can measure their weight, I can analyze their sweat. I just by watching their pattern of walking, I can determine when they are sick, I can analyze their voice.
Yep.
And suddenly you have the biggest set of sensors everyone would be jealous of because you have the largest real estate in every single home. Now, what business are you in? You are in the business of providing sensory information to humanity, and your world changes. So the point is rethinking the business. So when people say, I'm in the business of coaching, that is not it. You are in the business of transforming people's lives. It may be coaching today, but tomorrow it may be something different. So as you start to think about how human brain can now be connected through BCI, the brain-computer interface, to the cloud, it may be the way you deliver information may be completely different. You may have to upload your knowledge directly to someone's brain. But that does not change your business. So your business is really not coaching. Your business needs to be about transforming people's lives. And whatever mechanism may change, but what doesn't change is people needs to transform.
That's true.
Right.
That's true. So do you think, I was about to ask that question, if you were to play this game of what's the business that you're in, if we could take it one step further. So as a coach who's, let's say, getting certified today, YM certification or however it may be, if they are starting a business today, you would suggest that a way they design their vision may be more aligned to human transformation. Is that, if we were to play this game, what would you suggest?
What is coach's job? And again, you can probably guide me. The coach's job is really about behavioral change. It's fundamentally, in addition to very specific things that they may have a skill about, which is maybe they are a life coach versus they are a health coach versus they are AI coach or whatever that happens to be. There is a skill. And the second part, which is just as important, if not more important, is really their to some extent, they're psychiatrists. Their main purpose is how to use behavioral science to get people to believe in themselves and change themselves. Because you and I both know, I can't change you. Only you can change yourself. So what's my job? Is to give you the tools, give you the mindset, give you the mental framework that allows you to change yourself. Because that's all one can do.
Yeah.
Right.
No, 100%. 100%. And you're right. In some way, we are, mental models, and to take it further, one step further from what we don't know about mental models, a little bit more spiritual model sometimes. I feel, I don't know what's the right way to say it, but kind of lean into some things that we can't really prove, but kind of works in a way, like having a vision. Like it focuses your attention. That's all we can say psychologically about it, but it's beyond that, right? Because once you're pulled towards a vision, it's like you feel it in your body, in your bones. But yes, that is. So if there was a coach, you would say, think about the technology of transformation. I'm just trying to paraphrase to make sure I understand. Is that think about the technology that you use to transform somebody's life and be transient about it.
That's right. That means technology is simply a tools, not the destination. The technique you use today is different than what you may use 5 years from now. But the fundamentally, as you were talking about, Jeff said, what doesn't change is that people need that information, whether it is delivered through brain-computer interface, whether it's delivered through one-to-one coaching, whether it's delivered through internet, or some other mechanism that may be that people are able to actually manifest and able to get the information from this large consciousness that we are all part of, right? As you were talking about that, are we all connected? Because at the end of the day, you and I are simply part of one big energy source. If you think from a scientific perspective, we both are made of atoms. Atoms are made of electrons, protons, and neutrons. What are they made of? Quarks. What are they made of? Bosons. What are bosons made of? Simply floating waves. And floating waves have all possibilities like any quantum theory suggests, right? It's the observation that collapses the wave and we see. So when I touch and feel solid, we know it is our brain fooling our somatosensory sensors to believing it is solid. We know it is all simply energy waves. There is nothing here, right? So fact is, when you and I are made of energy and we are part of this universal energy, why can't we tap into the universal energy? We are part of it. There is nothing to tap into it. Yeah. So that's the reason when people start to have that dream, the vision, and they're starting to tune themselves into that wave, and if it resonates, then it gets amplified. And when it doesn't resonate, it dampens. So when you are transmitting a certain set of energy, you essentially are tuning your transmitter to that same energy that you're transmitting. You receive at the same thing. So if you happen to be a really negative person, you will surround yourself with a whole bunch of negative person who are constantly amplifying your energy. And suddenly you change your mindset through a coach to become a positive person. Suddenly your world around you changes and you get surrounded by the people who are positive people. Why is that? Is because suddenly your energy waves have changed and now they are actually being amplified by the same type of tuning.
Beautiful. I think you've put science to something that I thought had no science. That's wonderful. That actually gives me a great insight there. So Naveen, one thing is, in your journey as building so many companies and supporting so many companies to be built, you must have experienced a lot of times where you're chasing something and you're met with failure. And you're met with failure again. It feels like, are we even doing the right thing? What are some of the mind shifts or questions you ask yourself or you've asked your mentees, if I may, that have helped them overcome that situation or that feeling in that moment, feeling like, oh, it's not working out?
Yeah. So it's really interesting is that an idea that you have may or may not work. So every idea that we have doesn't have to work and does not mean you failed. An idea that does not work is simply a stepping stone to a different idea and a bigger idea, right? You only fail in life when you give up. Everything else is simply experimentation. An experiment doesn't have to succeed for you to succeed. Experiment simply tells you if it does not succeed, this is what you do next. And that's the beauty of looking at entrepreneurship is purely experimentation. You simply ask yourself, this is what I'm going to experiment with. And even before you do the experiment, you simply says, what are the outcomes? Either it succeeds or fails. If it succeeds, what will I do? If it fails, what's my next step? That means everything is simply information, and using that information, you know what the next step is. Yeah. Whether it succeeds or fails, doesn't matter. You still have the next step. And what I'm trying to say is the next step is not a failure. It doesn't matter which direction you go in. It's just simply a next step. In fact, Thomas Edison said it the best way. He said, I did not fail 1,000 times. I figured out the 1,000 ways the light bulb doesn't work. And that's what allowed me to find a way the light bulb indeed does work, right? So that means every single experiment he did, he learned something from it. And each of them gave him the next chance to say, oh, what if I try this? And then finally he found a way that actually works. So these are all look at life as simply the stepping stone and experiments rather than success or failure.
That's wonderful. So from a point of view, what I'm taking from it, and I hope this is what the person that's listening and watching this takes as well, is that don't approach your business or approach your business as a set of experiments.
That's right.
You're just taking into experiments, and so you have a little bit of that kind of a relationship with it. It's like, I'm not attached to this should work.
Yes.
This could work. But I'm going to try it with the full intention of it to work, but maybe it can not fail, but get feedback.
Everything works. My point is, when you say works, the works is a connotation that means works means it has to succeed for it to work. An experiment always works. It doesn't matter what the outcome is. When you do an experiment and you push the liquid, it is going to come out this way or this way. It doesn't matter which way it comes out. It gives you the next step. So it always works. You just think of everything you do is simply saying, what information would I collect from this? And based on that information, what my next step is going to be. It doesn't matter whether I need to turn left or I need to turn right. It just gives me the direction.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great reframe. So one of the things that we find in our community or generally in humanity is relationship with money.
Yes.
Money tends to have this hold on us. What's your relationship with money? How do you think about it?
Money is neither good nor bad. Money simply allows you to be that you were to begin with. So if you were a person that was an asshole, money simply allows you to be an asshole, right? If you really were doing something that meant something to you because you had a purpose, money simply allows you to pursue that purpose with even great vigor. That's all. The relationship with money is simply allows you to do the things that you want to do and allows you to be who you were. It doesn't change you. So people have this idea that money changes you. Money doesn't make someone bad. They have to be bad person to be bad, right?
Yeah.
If you are good, it doesn't make you bad. So to me, making money is never the goal. Making money is a byproduct. It's an outcome of doing things that make other people's life better. In other words, making money is like having an orgasm. If you focus on it, you're never going to get it. You just have to enjoy the process.
Okay. So what would you suggest if somebody's kind of like struggling with money?
Yeah.
Like, for example, especially when there's somebody, a new coach, they may have transitioned out of a career. Maybe they had good savings and everything. And the first year of business can be sometimes difficult, especially if it's self-funded. It's like, all right, this is all the money I got.
Yeah.
I'm starting out. How would you, if you were to give them one mentee advice, if I may, what should be their relationship with money?
Again, ask yourself, why are you doing it? And is that going to bring you happiness and joy while obviously dealing with the basic things of satisfying the basic needs? That means when you're starting out a business, you have to say, hey, how much time do I have before I run out of the runway? How much savings do I have? And the truth be told, when I started my first business, we took all of our savings. And I had a conversation with my wife. And I said, let's leave 6 months of savings and let me experiment to see if I can do something that could change our life. And I want to start a new business. And she said, how can you do that? We have young kids. I'm pregnant with our third kid. That is just a irresponsible thing to do, that you're going to take all of our saving and just blow it up because you feel like experimenting right now with your life. Are you going through that midlife crisis? And I said, no, it is something, a calling for me to do something that is bigger than me. I'm just tired of working for a job. I want to do something that actually could be impactful. And I did that. And we took all of our saving and we came close to losing it all. And just continue to persevere. We say we have to be able to make it work because there is no other choice. And maybe coming from that, a place where we started with nothing, gave me a lot of comfort that that's the worst that can happen is I can go back and I can go rebuild my life all over again. But I'm not going to just give up. I'm going to continue pushing forward. And that company went on to become a $40 billion company because it's completely persevered and I wasn't going to let go and fail. Because the only time I would have failed is when I gave up. So when it came close, it just allowed me to redouble my effort and say, we have to make a profit. We have to figure out how to make profit. And we're going to continue to build on it. Right? So to me, yes, every time in life, whether you are an entrepreneur, especially when you're a young entrepreneur, you're going to see these ups and downs. And what I've realized, and I think the best advice I can give someone who's just starting out, is that if you're alive, you have a heartbeat. What does that heartbeat look like? It goes up and down and up and down. When it's smooth, you're dead. So if you find yourself living a smooth life, you have chosen to live a life of a dead person. These ups and downs is what tells you you're still alive. When you are down, all you have to do is believe in yourself, hunker down, and know the next beat is going to be up. And when you are on top of that beat, never become so arrogant, because remember, the winter is coming and winter always comes.
That's beautiful. And I love that you drew that contrast. And I want to expand on that a little bit, also make it contextual for everyone. Is that the question that you shared, or I'm paraphrasing it, where you said, that's the worst we can get to, right? The place where we came from, right? And that's like, you come from a really humble beginning, and so do I somewhat. And I think that contrast stays in my head. It's like, oh, it's okay. Like, worst case scenario is still all right. Like, we lived, and we can always rebuild in a way. But I also feel, and I don't know if it's true for you, which is why I'm asking this question, is I almost keep my lifestyle expectations a little low. Like, I don't need a lot to feel joy. I don't need the fancy things to feel good about, that I'm living a good life. I feel good, and then I get to enjoy everything, right? So the reason I'm asking this question is because I feel that's the frame that a lot of people get stuck in, their lifestyle that they have right now.
That's right.
And they're so attached to it that they can't let go and live in that contrast of saying, if I'm starting a business, I'm kind of like, I've started to almost say, if you're starting a business of any sort, you have signed up for financial anxiety. And it'll stay with you. You just learn how to deal with it.
Or you actually cut down your lifestyle expectations and you start to live a humble life, knowing that you already assume you're going to suffer through that. And you want to cut down your expenses to increase the runway. That means when you're starting out a business, it is simply about how long the runway you can create. If you maintain an expensive lifestyle, you just created a short runway. And the longer the runway, the more chances of more experiments you can do. And the more experiments you can do, the more your odds increase of finding something that would work.
That's wonderful. That's such a great reframe. If you humble down your lifestyle, you're basically increasing the runway of experiments that you'll be able to do. And we've seen it, that the longer you run, the more likely it is that you'll win, just because from experimentation you learn so much.
And I think the thing is, once you start to live that life, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't change who you are, right? And God has been so kind to us, right? And here, I wear my Apple Watch. I don't have to wear a Rolex watch or some fancy watches that cost tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars to make myself feel good. Functional watch gives me time. That's all I need, tracks my things, and I'm happy with that, right? I don't have to buy, $500, $1,000 custom shirts. I get them from China, $21, and I'm happy, man. So point is, just learn to live a simple lifestyle. And it didn't change just because somehow God has been kind to me and I'm going to show off people buying $1,000 fancy shirt, or I'm going to buy a watch that costs me $100,000. I'm just a simple person. Buy my simple $100 Echo shoes. I'm a good to go.
But that's a big lesson, because not all of us are thinking about it that way. When we are starting, we think, oh, this is going to be easy. Whereas, like you said, it's like a heartbeat. It's not. Even if it seems easy for now, it doesn't mean it'll stay that way. So you have to learn to be comfortable with the movement of life and the movement of business. Well, I mean, that's been amazing. How can people learn more about the amazing insights you have all the time, what would the best place to go?
Ajit, I mean, you can always find me on social media. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn. You can find me there. You can go find me at viome.com, viome.com. You can find me, my name, naveenjain.com. And I look forward to hearing from everyone who is listening to this episode. And please feel free to reach out to me. And I'm easiest person to reach. Send me a DM on any social media, and I'll be happy to talk to you.
Thank you, Naveen.
Thank you, Ajit.